Good morning. This is the Blaine's World webcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You get more information and find out previous shows at our website, which is behind me somewhat, blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we focus on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce my guest today, and she is Ali Casparian, founder and director of a wonderful organization called Bounty and Soul. And welcome aboard, Ali. You can wave to all your fans and friends who are watching you. Okay, and that
Hi,
is
everybody.
Ali. And Ali, the first time I meet somebody, I always like finding out a little bit about them. And so I guess before you started Bought and Sold some 10 years ago, did you always know you wanted to, as a little child, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in a little town called Peekskill outside of New York City, about 40 miles north of New York City.
And growing up in Peekskill, New York, I'm from Long Island, if you can't tell.
Oh
But
yeah,
growing up,
I could tell.
growing up in Peekskill, did you always know you wanted to head your own nonprofit? Was that your goal as a child?
No, absolutely not. But what I did know at a very early age was that I loved food. I was, grew up with immigrant grandparents who, my grandmother propped me up on a counter when I was probably 5 years old, and she would cook all day these lavish, beautiful Armenian meals. I'm half Armenian, and I quickly became just immersed in food and a lover of food. And here I am and running a nonprofit about food.
So how did you get from growing as a kid, loving and food, how did you get to where you are now running a nonprofit?
Yeah, so my career trajectory, I went to college, got a 4-year degree in business management, and I still, even after I graduated, said to my parents, I said, I wanna be a chef. And so at the time, I just turned 60. So back then, to be in the food industry was not at all glamorous as it is today. And so, my parents were like, I don't think that that's a very lucrative career. And, they kind of they were trying to steer me in another direction. So my first job was in a kitchen with a corporate food contract company in Westchester County in New York, a company called Flix, which later became Sodexo, which is a huge national food contract company. So I was happy. I was super happy because I was in a kitchen. And I quickly rose up in that organization or that corporation into management and into a directorship, which was a very lucrative career for me for 17 years. I would like to say it's a wonderful story how I ended up starting a nonprofit, but I have lived experience of food insecurity after surviving a near-death violent assault by an intimate partner. Which completely changed my life. This was all up in the Northeast, and I moved down south to stay with my sister in Raleigh, and found myself, being told you should head to the mountains, you should head to Asheville, you'll love it there. And I really was just looking for a place to start my life over. So I ended up, the same story a lot of people have when they come to Western North Carolina, as they're coming up 40 and coming through the pass, and they see the first glimpse of those mountains and say that this is home. And I truly felt that. And first place I landed was Black Mountain. So and that's where I attempted to start my life over. I have lost everything. So truly starting from the ground up, and found myself food insecure within a couple of months of being here. And then also got involved in a community effort called the Welcome Table, where
Okay,
it was a
sure.
free meal for people that were facing food insecurity, and also just a meal to share with community, getting involved with community. So it was there that I also got exposed to food waste. I had the opportunity to go to the food bank and witnessed lots of fruits and vegetables being thrown away. And when or actually it was being carried out the door. And so I stopped the person who was carrying it out. And I said, "Where's all this produce going?" And the volunteer said, "Oh, it's going to a pig farmer." So that was really the aha moment for me, because when I was going to these meals every week, I would be sitting at a table with other people in the community that were saying the same thing. Like, we wish we could afford fresh fruits and vegetables. My kids want to just eat apples, but we can't afford it. We would just be saying that's the same thing. And here I saw an opportunity to fill a gap. So on the ride home that day, I said to the chef who was there, I said, next week I want to set up a couple of tables, and set it up like a farmer's market, flowers, tablecloth, because I truly believe in doing things with deep intention, dignity, and love. And that everyone is deserving of that. So
If I can jump,
sure enough,
let's
yep,
jump in here a second though, because what you say reminds me a little bit of what's happened as a result of this hurricane. That I don't know about you, but I've been so impressed by the level of help and support from the community, giving to people
amazing.
regardless of economic situation.
Yes,
And I'm talking
yes.
really a local church near us, fresh food, good food all the time, and just giving away. I'm so impressed, uh,
Yes,
by
yes,
people's giving. But I
yeah,
cut you off. I'm sorry. So you had the ride home, and you had an aha moment at that time.
right. Yeah, aha moment of, I want to go back. I want to rescue that food to prevent it from going into landfills. It was beautiful food, apples and strawberries and peppers and, all this beautiful food that was going to pig farmers. And when I had asked about, like, why is it going to the pig farmers, the reply was, nobody wants this food. So, and that is typically an assumption made sometimes in food pantries or food banks, that you know high quality, good, nutritious food, is not, what people want. They want sugary processed foods. So, but what I was hearing and paying attention to was that no, people really wanted fresh food. So, sure enough, in that next week, somebody had a truck, somebody had tablecloths, somebody had baskets. I cut flowers out of my garden to put on the table. And that was the first of the markets. And it really, people started coming. I had a camp stove that I was cooking some healthy meals and talking to people about how to cook healthy meals. And that quickly, grew very quickly into, one table became three tables, became 10 tables, one market became three markets, became, where we are today, which is, serving about 17, 18,000 people a month. So it really is in the spirit of listening to what community not only needs, but what do people want. And the organization is one that is very steeped in intention and love and inclusion, which is very, very important in everything that we do and the decisions we make. We include the community in that.
So, so
So it
talk,
is a community-driven organization.
so talk about Bounty and Soul then. So when did it officially come into place, and describe the process,
Yeah,
what happened?
so yeah, it was I mean, again, I had corporate, I ran a corporation for, I had a position in a corporation for 17 years. So I had some business sense, but really running a nonprofit is it's somewhat different but similar. But I had no idea how to file papers and all that. But what I can say, Blaine, is, and which has been true up until this very moment, is that whenever the person or situation opened up of where I needed help or support, or that right person showed up, or that right organization showed up to help. So, I learned of a nonprofit consultant that was moving her practice to Black Mountain, and she was actually wanting to get, involved in helping a nonprofit get set up. And so we met, and she helped to file all the articles of incorporation and the bylaws and the everything that's needed to get a 501(c)(3) status. So I can honestly say that this organization truly grew organically, in from the very first day. So it truly takes everyone in the community to contribute in the ways that they can contribute.
But
Everyone can contribute,
is that
and
person
that is
still
something that,
that
yeah.
person who helped you out? Is she still around?
She has her own consulting firm now. She's doing very well, and
Can
she's
we
based in Chicago, but we still keep in touch.
can we give a shout out to her? The person's name?
Canico Agency. Yes, Canico Agency.
Okay, so
Yeah.
make sure she gets a copy of this to let her
Kirsten,
know
yeah,
we're talking about
Kirsten,
her.
yeah, and her name is Kirsten Stevens.
Very nice.
She was my
So,
angel.
okay, well, we'll certainly mention her on the show. So she helped to get it off the ground. When did it officially become a nonprofit?
2014. So our official birth date of sorts is August 28th, 2014.
August 28th. Okay, so you had then, very exciting. So you had your 10th
We're,
anniversary this year.
we did. Yeah, and believe it or not, our big grand celebration, which we call our Farm to Fork fundraiser, was a week before the hurricane hit. So it was one of those juxtapositions of like, oh, we were at this beautiful farm, having this wonderful, 10 chefs that brought their wonderful food and all farm fresh food and lovely evening to, well, 6, 7 days later, experiencing the hurricane. So, but again, we've got such incredible memories of that evening and those connections that we made. Um, yeah,
So
it's kind
let's
of
talk about
surreal.
Bounty and Soul, where you are now. So hurricane hit. Bounty and
Yeah.
Soul, you were telling me off the air. So you have a physical facility, and then where are you and what happens at the facility?
Yeah. So the other kind of miraculous thing that happened was, prior to March of this year, we were operating out of a 3,000 square foot rented building, and we were literally outgrowing that space by the week because food insecurity rates here in Western North Carolina, prior to the storm, were already increasing through the last years and months due to the housing crisis and the inflation costs and all of the things. So it was putting a strain on the organization as far as physical capacity. So every day on my way, a couple times a day, I would drive by this warehouse space in Black Mountain here um, and I would just look at it and I just said, that would be the perfect building, but it was occupied. So I would drive by and I'd say the same thing. And then one day I drove by and there was nothing going on. So I called the realtor and I said, hey, can you chase this down for me? There's nobody there. And can you see what's going on there? And within 24 hours, I get a call back. I've contacted the owner. He's willing to sell or lease or whatever. He loves the organization. His wife goes to pick up food for another one of the neighbors, and he would love to discuss what the opportunities are. So it all turned around really quickly. We were able to purchase the building, and with help from some funders and donors, and we could not be doing what we're doing without that building. So it's a 10,000 square foot warehouse space, which is very hard to find in Buncombe County. And like I had mentioned to you before, it received no damage in the storm. And we basically leverage, we go through processing, ordering and processing about 25 to 35,000 pounds of perishable foods each week. And that's, through groups of volunteers and getting it out on the trucks to get out to the markets. And it's become and was, since March, we purchased it in March. We needed to do some upgrades to it. And we were in there by when was it? End of May. And so, we were completely able to mobilize and work into that greater capacity that the organization needed.
So talk
And
about, if you
and
would,
here
what
we are.
happens. Talk about, if you would, what happens then, so that you have a big building now and you have lots of volunteers. Where do you get the food
Yeah.
from, and how does it get distributed?
Yeah, so we like to say we work at the intersection of food, farms, and health. So the food is coming from different avenues. So one avenue is the donation avenue, and we work with store partners, retail store partners like Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, Sam's Club, and we pick up food that comes off their shelves, which is perfect. It's in date, it's perfectly fine, and we pick up that food and we bring it back to this warehouse. We'll put a holder there. And then we have what we call the Farmers Alliance program, where we work with about 75 local farmers and growers in the region. And we work either by purchasing produce from them, so we keep food or money going back into the local food economy. Or we the other way we work with farmers is that we bring groups out on the farm, not only to support the farmer with things like weeding and cultivating and harvesting, but we also are exposing people, volunteers, whether they be school groups or businesses that want to volunteer and get out for the day. We're exposing them to agriculture and what it's like to grow locally and support a local food economy and food system. So it's a win-win. It helps the farmers, and then it helps us as well, because of these partnerships and relationships we have with the farmers. Because that food then comes back to us, whether it's via purchased or donated. And then once it gets back into the warehouse, then we have volunteers that are putting it together. Some of the food that gets picked up from the stores may need to be culled a little bit. Oh, okay, that's got a little bit of a mushy thing on that goes into a compost pile. This is perfectly fine. That goes into a bin that then gets either loaded on a truck, that goes to a market, what we call these community markets. And these community markets are set up like a farmer's market. So tents and tables and tablecloths and flowers and music is playing, kids' activities, cooking demo. So, and that's the health part of the food farms and health that I'll talk about in a little bit. But it's like an event. It's like and these are popped up in different locations throughout, the Swananoa Valley. We also did Fairview, a pop-up in Fairview at the Lord's Acre, Root Cause Farm.
Okay.
And so we have a lot of people that come to these markets. We also have one that's very culturally aligned. So the food there is for the Latinx community. So tomatillos and peppers and maseca, all the foods that are cultural to that community, we provide at one market a week there. So yeah, that's in Swananoa. So we've kind of all over the place. We also just have a farm, what we call a farmer's market truck. And this is a custom mobile unit that is it's a beautiful truck, but it also is one that would only take one or two people to drive, get out, pull up the side of the truck, roll out the shelves, and there you have this beautiful fresh market that people can shop. Everything is no cost, but people can select the produce right off the truck.
Now,
So
let me jump
yeah.
in here a second in terms of trying to put this whole thing together. So you mentioned you're working with volunteers. How many volunteers do you have working with you? About?
Oh, well, we have about we have thousands on the volunteer roster, but we are working with about 450
Wow.
active volunteers. So and they're in all capacity. So like I mentioned, they could be out on a farm, or they can be at the warehouse, or they could be at the market that's helping to, set up the tables and the tents, and help people carry out boxes of food to their cars. So it's a very active volunteer pool. We or another thing we do is we deliver boxes to people that have transportation barriers as well.
So talk
So
about
that's all volunteer run.
if somebody's interested in coming on board as a volunteer, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, well, it's super easy. They can go to our website, go to the Get Involved page, and there is a form you can fill out. And we have a wonderful volunteer coordinator who gets back to you right away, and has a conversation. So, what do you like to do? What is it that you're interested in? So it's a really easy process to get involved with us, and we really want to make sure we match what a person likes to do, what their interests are, where they find joy, to a volunteer task.
But to make it easy, you have to give a key bit of information, and that is the website, which is
Yeah, it's Bounty and Soul. So Bounty, Soul, SOUL.org.
okay. And you mentioned also another key factor, is bountyandsoul.org, and you mentioned you have a volunteer coordinator. Let's give a shout out to that person, and that person is
Carla, Carla,
okay. So you'll speak with Carla, and so
Carla.
that's a lot of volunteers, 450 people
Yeah.
you have on the bank, and she'll match and mix you. Is there an age limit for the volunteers, young to old? What's the
No,
youngest?
I know. Yeah, the youngest, I mean, we've had a 3-year-old come with mama and help pack boxes, or we want to make sure everyone's safe. Certainly, we have equipment going around in the warehouse. So we do have some safety rules around in the warehouse, but certainly, out on a farm, or at the market, there are opportunities for, like for example, for if somebody has a kid, we might place them at the kids activity tent, and that kid can help engage other kids in doing some activities under that tent. So,
Well,
and then I'll just put a little shout out for our health component of the food farms and health. And our Rooted in Health program is really around whole person health. So not only nutrition and cooking, but also whole person, like emotional, mental well-being. So we have yoga classes, we do mindfulness meditation classes. So it's really not, it's not only about, what you eat, but what is your stress level? A lot of stress management classes and breath work and things like that, and that can't be more important at a time like this. So so yeah, that and those classes take place. Some of them take place at one of the markets, which is kind of our flagship market, which takes place in Black Mountain at the old Bilo supermarket, that parking lot. Um, and we have a big education tent there where a cooking demo happens, and then we might be doing a class on breath work as well, and then we have a kids program, and that kids programming is happening under a tent at this market too, so kids can be doing anything from like food art, or making doing any sort of art, which is a very healthy expression, or they've done games where they're active, because physical activity is important, to making a kale salad. So there it runs the gamut, as well for the kids,
in
and
term,
then we in this warehouse. Yeah, and then in this warehouse, we have actually created a teaching kitchen, and a classroom space where, right, as before the storm hit, we were having classes, and bringing people into that space to, diabetes prevention, Ayurveda. I mean, all different kinds of classes on health.
you mentioned 3-year-old is the youngest. What's the age range? It goes up till what age?
Oh, I mean, at that, you got to be careful of who, what you ask people their age. And I would be making assumptions
Right.
here because I've never asked anybody their age, but I would say in their 80s, if not
Okay.
90s. Yeah, I mean, it's really about inclusion and making sure we are creating spaces where people can feel like they have meaning. I think that is so important, and for all of us, for our mental and emotional health, that we feel like we belong and we that we have meaning.
So you're putting this whole thing together with a lot of volunteers. How many staffers do you have? People who work.
Oh gosh. Yeah. I yeah, we have some part-timers and full-timers. We're about 24 staff members and they work in all different departments. We also run a program called the Healthy Opportunities Pilot, which has its own wing of the warehouse. And that is a program that is it's a pilot program through Medicaid and the what's called Impact Health. So there are human service organizations within the region that provide social determinant of health resources. So it could be food, it could be transportation, or it could be IPV prevention. So all of these resources that are what are called social determinants of health are seen as ways to lower healthcare costs. Like, so if the idea is if we provided somebody that's on Medicaid and is eligible with food and transportation and the other resources, will that lower healthcare costs? So we're in this pilot program that is very exciting and could change the face of healthcare for not only the region but also the nation. So we are part of that pilot,
If
which is
somebody comes to
exciting.
Bounty and Soul, excuse me, are there any restrictions in terms of finances or it's open to
No,
anybody?
it's open to anybody. There are no eligibility requirements. The only thing we ask is how many are your household and what is your zip code so that we can know where people are coming from. And perhaps people are traveling far. Are there other resources closer, or is that a gap in service that in the future we can provide for? So that's an important data point that we like to collect.
And moving forward, as you said off the air about the hurricane, who knows when that'll be, we'll be out of the hurricane. But aside from recovery efforts and that effort, 5 years from now, what do you see Bounty and Soul? Where do you see them going or moving in what direction?
Yeah, I mean, we have from the beginning been the leader in this realm of providing fresh food to food insecure communities, and also providing that health component alongside of it, and also providing that connection to the farms. So I think it's a very innovative model. I would like to see it scale. I think that certainly the organization grew very quickly because the demand and the need and the want for something like this is high. I also recognize this situation we're in prior to the hurricane, and now with the hurricane, that it is going to be years of recovery and rebuilding. So there will be more people that are struggling or facing food insecurity. So, I see us in playing a very important role in connecting people to not just food, but to fresh, nutritious food so that it protects and gives people the opportunity for health and well-being.
And,
So,
and, and
yeah.
one final question, if I can ask, you've mentioned it, and I kind of understand the concept, but the benefits of the people who don't know what food insecurity is, or worse, or fortunately never gone through it, what exactly is food insecurity?
Yeah, well, it's the inconsistent or the lack of access to healthy or to some definitions say the food security is having consistent access to food that supports health. So if you kind of break that down, it's also saying, access to healthy food, so or nutritious food. So, people that don't have consistent access to food that supports health, then people are food insecure. So, and it can look different. It can look like skipped meals. It can look like, making swaps between paying for medication or buying food, or, these are, or paying rent and buying food. And how the system unfortunately is set up is the most affordable food is the less healthy food. So again, which leads to nutrition insecurity. So I like to say we are a food and nutrition security organization because we address both, and that is important.
And one
And
last
I say
time,
you either pay the farmer or pay the doctor.
great line, by the way. One last time, Allie, if folks want to get in touch with Bounty and Soul, what's the best bet?
Yeah, so go to our website, bountyandsoul.org. You can learn about us, learn about everything I've talked about today, our programs, our hurricane relief efforts, what we're doing. I mean, we're doing incredible work in that realm, and we all know that we are in it for the long haul, and that it's so important that we are supporting our communities at this time, not only at this time, but months and years to come.
And so folks go there, they can find out an organization, they can volunteer. And I could be
Yeah.
wrong, but I assume if they want to make a financial contribution, you would let them do so?
Oh, please, yes. So, and know that, our your dollar is having the greatest impact by food. So we are purchasing food that's helping the farmers, and we are purchasing food that then goes right to people. So I don't think of that's one of the greatest ways to have a tangible donation, to know that those dollars are going to support nutrition and healthy food for people.
Okay, I'd like to thank you, Ali Casparian, for being my guest on this edition of the Blaine's World
Yeah,
webcast. I'd also like to thank my producer, Cappy Tassetti, and hopefully we'll actually maybe even see you in live time sometime in the future. Thank you.
I would love that, Blaine. Thank you. Thank you.